Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the People ONS meeting on Tuesday, the 4th of March 2025. The chimes have rung, it's now 7 p.m. and I would like to start this meeting. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. There are no planned fire alarms this evening. In the case of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest available exit and congregate at the assembly point outside the college, which is across the road. So that's all the housekeeping out of the way. A couple of things that I would like to just touch on at the start of the meeting, otherwise we may forget them later on. The first one, you may remember that we were due to have a meeting in February, which was then cancelled because there was no point in having the meeting. It was to do with the call-in. We need to do a little bit of legality, so I'm just going to hand over to Claire to tell us what we need to do.
Thank you, Chair. So as the meeting was no longer required, we can open and close the meeting and say that there was no further business to transact at that meeting and move on to tonight's.
Is everybody in agreement that that just happened? Thank you. I'm sure you can log it in the minutes. Okay. A couple of other things that I would just like to say. The first one, and I'm sure Councillor Hartstein is going to touch on it in great detail, but in welcoming people here this evening, I just felt I should share a really great experience that I had on Friday when I went along to see the fostering team's celebration evening. And as I say, I'm sure it will be discussed later on, but a truly lovely, lovely evening with some amazing people. The work of our fostering team is tremendous, and the impact that it's had on the lives of so many young people, it just is beyond belief, really. And I just commend everybody involved with that service, and I'm sure they had a good night on Friday, and long may their great work continue. Other couple of things that I just need to touch on, and it's sort of with I call it our sister committee in a way, which is corporate parenting, and it touches on many of the things. We had a couple of useful briefing sessions, those of us who are members of that committee, in the week, and just items to bring that I think will come forward to this council in the next year. We talked about home to school transport and how I think, well, it wasn't just me that said it at the meeting, that there are issues. We've got an awful lot of new houses coming. We haven't got an awful lot of new schools. And we've got a 3-mile distance between some of the secondary schools and some of these new housing estates. And I think it's a problem that we need to start to look at as a council in a bit more detail. So as the other committees and things that you're on next year, it doesn't touch on us directly, but it is a looming problem for this council. How are we going to get all these kids from the new houses to school? And the second part of it was we had a really wonderful, a very informative briefing about SEND in the borough and the amount of great work that is going on. And again, it is possible that Vicky may touch on it, but really, really informative. And, you know, I'm usually at the foremost when I'm knocking the council and moaning about this, that and the other, but there really is a great deal of good stuff that's going on in this borough. And we should rightly flag it all up when we experience it. So with that, I shall move on from my greeting. And I would say, have we had any apologies for absence? Looks like a full house. I think Councillor Fish is not with us. Have we heard from? He may well arrive later. Then we'll leave that open till the end of the meeting if you can fill it in. The minutes, item 2. I move that the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 30th of January 2025, as outlined in the agenda, are approved as a correct record, assuming, of course, no one has any comments on the accuracy of the minutes. So we're all agreed that those minutes be approved. Thank you very much indeed. That's page 1 out of the way. Item 3, declarations of interest. Well, I'm interested. Anybody got any declarations of interest relative to business on tonight's agenda? Okay, we'll make a note of that. And with that, we move on to our first substantive item, which is the Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Education, to be presented, I believe, by Councillor Hartstein with the help of Andrea. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to present my portfolio holder report to you this evening. Just to say, I can't believe how quick this municipal year has gone. It's been a real honour to be Thurrock's Cabinet Member for Children's Services and for Education. Just before I present the report, I would like to take this opportunity to thank officers for their unwavering support for me, especially as a new portfolio holder. They have been responsive, they've been patient, and have always taken the time to answer any questions and asks that I made of them, no matter how short notice I asked or the level of detail that I required. And I just wanted to highlight as well now at this point that Thurrock has a committed, hard-working and capable workforce in children's services and in education. And I'm genuinely really proud to have been their political lead this municipal year. Obviously, the report starts on page 15. I don't intend to read through it for you because I'm sure you've done plenty of reading of it. But just to highlight that, obviously, the first part of the report is focusing on education. We look at schools, early years, special educational needs, school transport, which I know that the Chair touched on, comparisons, virtual school, the HAF programme, Thurrock Adult Community College. Again, a little bit there on home to school transport, schools expansions, and if Chair would be interested at some point, we do also have an update in terms of pupil place planning, if that was something you'd want to be presented with as well. Inclusion, SEN, the DSG, commissioning, and then the second half of the report moves on to children's social care and early help, and obviously you are able to read through that. We talk about quality assurance, early help and prevention, youth justice, our children in need, child protection, children looked after, initial health assessments, our care leavers and fostering adoption and placements. I don't intend to go through the report for you, but obviously I'm happy to take any questions, any feedback and any comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hossin. I think Councillor Cecil, you have a couple of questions. Yeah, I do. Do you want me to read them out, or are you? Okay. I shall do my best interpretation of your good self. The question one is, what's the latest status of reinforced, autoclaved, aerated concrete rack repairs in our affected schools?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, I shall just read out something for you. Let's get it up one. Thank you, Councillor Cecil. Would you like me to read the whole thing out? I've got quite an extensive update. Shall I read the whole thing out? Yeah? Would that be helpful? Yep, no problem. Yeah, no worries. This will come, obviously, I'll send it over as well as a note for the minutes. So, St Clair's. All remediation work has been completed. All ground floor specialist classrooms are now fully operational. The first floor of rack block has been, sorry, I read its technical terms here, has been acro-propped, which has allowed the full use of the ground floor. The loss of the classrooms on the first floor has now been compensated by the lost Berger units. These units will remain in situ until the new build has been completed. The DfE have appointed technical advisors to progress the new build. All parties are looking at options for the location and phasing of the new building. There will be some refurbishment works to the other building on site. Feasibility is underway. A full tender progress will be undertaken to appoint a main contractor, at which point a full programme of works will be developed and agreed with the Trust. The Trust will be engaging with ward members once the building layout has been agreed with the DfE and the plans are ready to progress. Moving on to Thameside now, Thameside Primary. Remediation works have now all been completed. All RAC, temporary accommodation, has been removed. The Trust is currently awaiting a decision due imminently from the DfE on the longer-term proposal for the RAC block. Arthur Bugler Primary. Interim remediation works have now been completed to ensure the safety and operation of all RAC areas. All RAC temporary accommodation, including marquees, have been removed. As part of the school's rebuilding programme, the DfE are looking at the whole school estate, which includes RAC affected and all other areas of the site. This school is part of the school rebuilding programme. This will be in tranche 2 of 25-26 DFE projects, whereby long-term works are undertaken and all classrooms are fully operational. East Tilbury Primary. Interim remediation works have now been completed to ensure the safety and operation of all RAC areas. All RAC temporary accommodation, including marquees, have now been removed. As part of the school's rebuilding programme, the DFE are looking at the whole school estate, which includes RAC-affected areas and all other areas of the site. This school is part of the school rebuilding programme. Again, this will be in tranche 2 for 25-26 DFE projects, whereby long-term works are undertaken. All classrooms are fully operational, and that concludes the update from officers. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. John, have you got any answers?
I would just like to say I was fortunate enough to be asked to go and see 3 of those schools. And I was just hugely impressed by how well everybody had done. The parents, the children, the staff immensely, the head and the senior leadership team were just worn out. But they were carrying on. It was a very, very good news story, the way everybody pulled together. That's what I'd like to put on record.
Thank you, Councillor Cecil. Your second question then relates to, I believe it's on page 24, the Send Delivery Better Value programme showing a deficit of 17 million by 2029. It talks of a long-term solution being required. What mitigation is being considered, and is the risk management team involved in this process?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to hand over to officers for this one. Over to Andrea, I believe, because obviously for the technical details. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. I've got a response from our accountant, if I may read that out, and then I can hand it over to be included in the papers. So the DBV is the point of the DBV was to support local authorities who had an overspend, and the grant was to support us to try to mitigate against that overspend in future. The 17 million is a projected outturn at 2029. And so what David has said is the DSG, the Dedicated Schools Grant, has a carried forward surplus of 0.63 million this year. This reflects a strong partnership working in Thurrock, and is a decrease of 4.6 million from 27 and 18 financial year. The increased demand in 24-25 will result in the DSG returning to a deficit position of up to £1 million. The government extended the DSG statutory override in December 22. So we have a statutory override which allows us to go overspent, and they've extended that for a one-off period for up to 3 years to the 31st of March 2026. When the statutory override falls away, the accumulated deficit will be the responsibility of each local authority. However, this will make a number of LAs technically insolvent and will require the issuing of a Section 114 notice. Therefore, from 26-27, LAs will be responsible for DSG deficits. The high needs position is a national issue that requires a long-term solution from government, both on the level of funding received through the Dedicated Schools Grant and how the system operates. The House of Commons Public Accounts Committee in January has given the government 6 months to set out its plan to rescue the failing special educational needs system. The removal of the high needs deficit statutory override next year is forecasted to put almost half of all councils in danger of issuing a Section 114 notice. So current and forecasted expenditure reflects demand and the cost of delivering the statutory minimum service. And I don't know if members are aware, but there was an article in the Guardian today which puts that into more context.
Councillor Sasson.
Yeah. What about the involvement of the audit team in the council? Are they looking at it, and the risk management team? Because this is a large sum to be hanging over our heads. by 2029 if things go awry?
Yeah, I mean, if members do want an audit of the DSG, then we can arrange that, because that's not a problem. We can add it to the audit programme. But I'm not sure if councillors saw the press releases. So the government have now committed to, and it was going to be part of my update, the government released a press release to say they are now going to release a white paper on the DSG, and particularly on the high needs block, because they've recognised the pressures across all of the local authorities. And that's due in late spring, with a solution to send pressures, as well as dealing with all the legal issues around local authority funding on send DSG. We will see what the outcome of that white paper is going to be. Obviously, they will consult, and we just need to hold. There is a lot of press on this today, so we hold with bated breaths. A lot of local authorities are now campaigning heavily on this issue, so we are not the only ones. And if you look at the press releases today, the figures are staggering pressures across local authorities.
Thank you. Thank you for that information.
Has anyone else got any questions? Yeah, Ngozi.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on early years. I can see from the report it's very positive. We have over 200 providers for early years, which has been graded. However, there are kind of settings that are not yet engaging with being graded. So what are we going to do to encourage them to get their settings approved and graded by Ofsted? On page 17. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, I'm talking about early years providers. We have over 200 providers of early years in Thurrock. However, we have outstanding for some of them. However, there are some that are not yet engaging with the local authority to kind of get it graded so that they can provide early years and childcare in Thurrock. So what are we going to do to encourage them to get their settings graded and approved by Ofsted?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Leake, are you talking about the ones that weren't graded good?
The ones not graded yet. So what are we going to do to encourage them to engage with us so that they can get the approval or, for them to be graded?
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
So 93% of our settings are good. You have to be registered with Ofsted in order to open, so they're all registered with Ofsted already. They just may have not yet had their first inspection, or if they've had an inspection and they're not yet good, they're working with our school effectiveness team. The early years team within that team work with them to improve so that they get good at their next inspection.
Sorry, Chair, could I just come back in? Would that be... Sorry, thanks. I was just saying, just to point out as well, that was saying down there, obviously, if this, there is the possibility that if the settings don't engage, that they wouldn't be allowed to offer the government-funded aspects. So just to say that obviously the encouragement, the incentive is there for them to engage, otherwise they could lose their funding. So thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Anyway.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. Page number 21 regarding this Thurrock Adult Community College. So adult skills funding under how much funding is receiving from the Department for Education? Can we know how much funding?
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have those figures with us? I didn't bring those with me this evening. I can certainly go away and... No. Can I come back to you with those figures? Yep, thank you.
Question. So under this education, like how many adult enrollment happened and how many people are getting services yearly basis? Can we get that details, please?
Sorry, how many learners are there across the week? Yes, I actually went down there to visit the Adult Learning College a couple of weeks ago, actually. I went down there and I've met, so they have courses across the week in terms of ESOL, they have maths and English classes, they have a range of courses. I met learners on the English language course, so it's an upskilling their English, and I think there was 12 on that course at that particular time. And then the ESO course that I met learners on, there was about a dozen in that course. So again, coming back to you, I can come back with figures on that, because this is obviously just an overview of all the different services, but I can come back to you with exact figures on the Adult Learning College. That's not a problem. And actually, just saying that, I'm in the process as well of organising a counsellor session, because the Adult Learning College are really keen to come and speak to all counsellors about the services that they offer, the community offer that they have, the learners that they have. So I'm in the process of setting that up as well, because I'd be really keen to come and talk to the whole of the 49 counsellors about that. So they will certainly take questions there as well. But I'm literally in the process of getting that team session set up, and then they'd like to invite counsellors to go and have a look around the college as well, which I would urge people to do because it's phenomenal.
Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hartstein, for your report. It's really just a couple of comments more than anything else. I was really pleased to see the education results, which were above average for Year 6 and really getting there for GCSE, and they've really improved from the figures we saw last year, so that was really good to see. And with the HAF programme, it says that 2,000 family packs were distributed. Do you know how many families attended? I mean, that wouldn't be as many as 2,000, would it? Is that just over? Is that the accumulation of the Easter, summer, and Christmas? Do you think? There. Okay, that was really good. Yep. No, thank you. It's really.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Question.
Councillor Heath. Right. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Hartstein. Your report was really interesting reading. My question is about the children looked after initial health assessments on page 34. It says 24.5% were completed in time. Is there a reason for the late assessments, and is there a plan to increase the percentages?
Thank you, Councillor Heath. Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's always obviously been an issue and something that we are obviously completely on top of in terms of our concerns around the figures. They are disappointing and they continue to be disappointing, and I don't think there's anybody here in the room that wouldn't agree that the figures are disappointing. I just wanted to outline a few things actually. So following the Ofsted inspection, where we was graded outstanding, just thought I'd mention that. Ofsted obviously also picked up on it. It was something that I'd shared when I met with the Ofsted inspectors about my concern. It's something that I discuss with officers whenever we meet. But just to say that actually Ofsted did write to the ICB after our Ofsted inspection to express their concern about the state of the speediness of the timeliness of the IHAs. And I have to say that's really, really unusual for Ofsted to take that step to write to the ICB. I have got an update from that, just to let you know, just to let the committee know that the ICB have invested heavily in this now, in looking at the initial health assessments, and there's been a new pathway has been developed around this. And just to let those of you on the Corporate Parenting Committee know that this will be coming up as a paper for those of you on the Corporate Parenting Committee to have a look at, to discuss, and Health will be presenting that paper. So there will be the opportunity for those of you on corporate parenting to discuss that with health colleagues. But absolutely it is an issue that for years and years has been a concern of ours. And as I say, councillors, senior officers and now Ofsted are concerned. So thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, well done. The two out of 15 schools graded by Ofsted by the January 2024 are requiring some improvement. And I just wondered if you could give us a bit more clarity over the clear route to improve their Ofsted outcomes. Thank you.
I mean, yes, just to say, obviously, as the academy system, that again, you know, that there is nothing in terms, or we are unable, or officers, I should say, are unable to directly influence. However, it was mentioned in, and I need to find the bit in the report where they will challenge the school. They do challenge the schools, obviously, in terms of, as I say, we've got the two schools here, both in July 2024, both requiring improvement, as you say. There is a duty, obviously, to make sure that the local authority are checking and keeping up to date with what they are doing in terms of their improvements. And when Ofsteds go in and carry on, obviously they go in and do their interim checks. That is obviously also fed back to the local authority. So Sheila and Andrew, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to come back in there in terms of the duties on the local authority in terms of Ofsted. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add at all.
That's fine then. Thank you very much.
I thought you had two, David.
Well, I was just we'll obviously get a report once they've done their findings on these extra two schools. Correct? Is that what will happen? They've got to do it. That's what I was inquiring about, the route to improve their Ofsted outcomes.
Sorry, yes, so the reports the inspection and reports were in July 2024, so they will have that already, that will have gone back to them, and then Ofsted will return to carry out progress inspections, for want of a better word, and again, they will be set action plans when they go in from there, so.
Thank you, that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Day. Thank you, Councillor Alstein. Just one question from me, and I do apologise. It's a slight ambush question, so if you don't want to answer it or feel it, just bang me an email. But I noticed today we announced the secondary school placements, which was decent reading, to be fair. I think it was 77%. The one thing that slightly concerned me was that it's actually I think it's 4 out of the last 5 years, and I couldn't quite check the figures for 2022. We've actually shown a year-on-year improvement going forward in terms of that. And given that in the last couple of years we've actually built 2 new secondary schools, it's probably a blip and no more than that. And given that there were a lot of kids coming into the system, but is there a reason you think why we haven't continued the improvement? And are you confident that the improvement will come back next year?
It has gone down very marginally. So, I mean, and I haven't, to be honest with you, I haven't had time to go, it was only released yesterday. I haven't had time to go for a full briefing with Sheila, but I have obviously we've discussed it this afternoon in terms of taking that slight dip, but it is a very, very slight dip, isn't it, in terms of first choice and overall. We can get a briefing note, certainly, too, you know.
Yeah, I've seen the release. I mean, yeah, it is marginal. I'm not saying, I mean, I think it's something like 1% on the first choice and possibly on the top 3, maybe 1.5% or something like that. It's nothing disastrous, don't get me wrong. But given, as I say, I'm sure if I was, well, I am a member of the public, looking at the new schools that we've got 2 brand spanking new secondary modern buildings now, plus we've got Treetops Free School, which also classifies in part as a secondary. So we've got all these extra schools, and yet we're still not able to improve on last year in terms of the number of people who are getting the first choice placements. And by all means, just come back to me on it as and when you properly brief. But and other than that, thank you for your report. Everybody all done with questions? Sorry, go on.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to come back on that. I was just going to say, just to reassure you and the committee, I can then send you the pupil place planning document that we had prepared. Save me reading it out. I can send that off for the minutes as well. And that talks about planning, obviously, in terms of future planning. So. Yeah,
and I know it's a never changing field. I mean, you know, more people are coming into the borough, therefore it becomes, you know, we can have new schools, but most of them are already oversubscribed. So it's a very, very difficult situation. So thank you for that. Thank you for your report. Very informative and some good answers to questions. So we move on to item 5, which is the Mosbourne Federation update, which is basically going to be a verbal update, I believe, from Councillor Hartstein. As I spoke on this at the last meeting, I would like to just touch on the impact of Mosbourne and the ongoing situation. I think it was pretty clear that I really did feel that the right thing for this council to have done would have been to go down the route that we did offer to residents, which was to form a task and finish group, but the majority of the committee at the last meeting felt that was not an appropriate thing to do, and that's fine. At the end of the day, it's the majority of people. As a ward councillor that deals with, and I've got Hasselbrook right on my patch, and you know, this situation has not gone away, and there are, I don't want to go into details, but I regularly am getting phone calls. I know colleague councillors across Stamford and Corringham are continuing to get calls. And the common theme among a number of the calls is that parents are A, sceptical, and B, scared to go through the system of complaints. And indeed, I got a phone call, I think it was about 9:25 on Sunday morning, when all I was thinking about was me bacon and eggs. And I ended up with a very upset lady who'd spent all the weekend stewing over a situation concerning a child. Don't need to go into the details. It was very distressing, and it related to the behaviour of a particular teacher. Now, the complaints procedure that Mosbourne have is that you do have to go to the school and that teacher as your first point of call. And this lady was in two minds as to whether to invoke the complaints procedure. And in the end, she did. And I had a catch-up phone call before this meeting, and it actually went quite well, which is good to show that it can be good. But she was very brave about doing it, and was worried. And I just feel we should at some point have an alternative system for those parents who are scared and who are worried and do feel, for want of a better phrase, intimidated. But it may well be that you know, I think I'm reflecting what councillor colleagues are telling me across Stamford and Corringham. You know, it is still an area of grave concern. It's gone quiet, and we're certainly not at the level that we were 2 to 3 months ago pre-Christmas with concern. And a lot of the little niggly things have been ironed out, and fair play to Mosbourne if that is the case. And indeed, I'm actually going to go and meet the mysterious Mr. Hughes on Thursday, which will be interesting. So, you know, I just wanted to say that because I don't want people in our area or people who have children at those schools or the 3 schools to think that this council is not taking their concerns seriously. Certainly the ward councillors continue to take it seriously. And I know that Councillor Hartstein takes it very, very seriously. So does Michelle, who's not with us this evening, and Sheila. So our message is, you know, we are there, we are concerned, but I think progress is being made. I think it may be not as quick as some people want, but it is being made. But at that, I'll shut up, and no doubt Councillor Hartstein can give us an update as to where that she is and Michelle is, and the official line of the council.
Thank you, Chair. Hold on to your hats because it's quite long, so I do apologise. So, I've broken the update down into sections just to ensure that I've covered all the areas of concern that were raised by parents and by ONS previously. So, firstly, Ofsted complaints. There have been a total of 3 complaints made to Ofsted since the Mosbourne Federation became the Academy Trust. 2 were known and shared at the last ONS and have now been closed, with no further actions or concerns after being thoroughly investigated. The 3rd, the latest complaint, continues to be investigated. Ofsted have not identified any concerns thus far with what has been raised with them and are satisfied with the school's approaches to the incidents that have been investigated. Although we are approaching the end of the municipal year, I am happy, of course, to provide an update to the committee members regarding the 3rd complaint once it's known. Complaints to the local authority. The local authority has received 1 parental complaint since the last overview and scrutiny. This is being dealt with through the EHCP route as the young person has special educational needs. The CEO of Mosbourne has agreed to meet with this parent after I met with him on Friday, and this meeting is already in the process of being set up. I have liaised with the parent and fed back the contact details for the CEO for a meeting to be arranged for a mutually convenient time. The DFE, so the Department for Education. On Monday, the 24th of February, I met with the Regional Schools Director, Jonathan Duff, and two of his advisors, alongside Michelle Lucas, Assistant Director for Education and Commissioning. At this meeting, we discussed safeguarding, SEND, and parental confidence in the Federation. Jonathan outlined the history from a DFE perspective and assured me that the DFE are confident in Mossbourne's approach. We discussed parental complaints and parental confidence, and Jonathan shared the importance of following the school's complaints process and policy. Jonathan shared that the DFE welcomes parental complaints, as long as the parents are able to evidence that they have followed due process. We discussed further meetings between myself as the portfolio holder and with the DFE, and Jonathan agreed to meet with me on a regular basis and whenever I requested in between those meetings. This is the second meeting I've now had with the DFE. The Mossbourne Federation. On Friday the 28th of February, I met with Peter Hughes, CEO of the Mossbourne Federation, alongside Michelle Lucas. We discussed the following: safeguarding, parental complaints, special educational needs, staffing updates in the lights of the consultation and how this affects children and young people at the schools, pupil place planning, a specific complaint which I've already talked about, previous and future meetings, and Federation, local authority, portfolio holder relationships. Looking firstly at safeguarding and parental complaints. Peter provided an update on the recent safeguarding review of the Mossbourne Victoria Park Academy in Hackney, following the allegations made against the Federation. Whilst the review has not yet concluded, Peter has been advised by the City and Hackney Safeguarding Children's Partnership, who are undertaking the review, that no child is at any immediate risk of significant harm and that no urgent action is required in respect of staff members. This has been fed back to parents and to staff members at the schools in Hackney, and I am now feeding this back to you to reassure you as committee members in the light of ongoing media attention. I am happy to feed back again once the review has taken place and the outcomes shared if you would so wish. Peter Hughes also shared that as a federation, they were concerned, and actually this is touching, Chair, on what you were talking about just now. So Peter Hughes shared that as a federation, they were concerned that some parents and carers may have lost confidence in the federation's formal complaints procedures, which again, I know was an issue shared at the, was an issue raised, at the parents' meeting that myself and Michelle Lucas attended on the 2nd of January. To restore confidence, the Trust has appointed an external senior barrister to conduct an independent assessment of the Federation's complaints procedure and parents' and carers' experiences of using it. Once again, I am happy to feed back once I am informed of the outcomes. Special educational needs. We discussed parental concerns around the perceived removal of support for children and young people with special educational needs. Peter explained his rationale for the change in the type of support provided. He is aware of the need to put into place all provision in the child's EHCP, and that is a statutory duty on the school and on the local authority. As an officer in my day job, working in special educational needs, I can reassure the committee members that Peter's rationale for changing the way that SEN support is provided is completely in line with up-to-date pedagogical thinking, backed up by empirical evidence from education experts in the field, such as those from the Institute of Education and the Education Endowment Foundation. Pupil place planning. We began initial conversations around pupil place planning, keeping in mind the new house builds near to the Mossbourne schools, as you raised, Chair. Michelle has put Peter in touch with the appropriate officer at the council to continue this conversation. Staffing updates. Michelle and I were reassured that as a consequence of the consultation, no staffing changes would take place for this academic year, providing us with the confidence and the reassurance that children and young people at the schools would not have their studies affected this year. We will be continuing this conversation as the academic year progresses, although I must stress that all three schools obviously are part of an academy trust, and therefore the local authority has no power or control over the curriculum or staffing. Previous and future meetings. Peter shared that he has held the first in a series of regular meetings with parents. On Monday, the 13th of January, he attended a meeting at Portside, which was Hassenbrook. That meeting lasted 2.5 hours. On Wednesday, the 15th of January, he attended Fobbing, which was Gable Hall, and that meeting lasted 3 hours. On Monday, the 20th of January, he attended Herd Lane Primary, and he didn't give me a time. He just said he stayed there until all the questions were asked and answered. The next meetings are now in the diary as well, so he will be attending the Fobbing Academy on the 30th of April at 5 o'clock, Portside on the 28th of April at 5 o'clock, and Herd Lane, he has it, but unfortunately Peter wasn't able to locate it in the diary right at that moment, but I can go back and get the details. And then he also has 3 further meetings in July booked in his diary to meet at the schools for the parents. I am confident that the Federation took concerns from parents seriously, as these meetings were set up straight away in line with Mossbourne's wishes to enable good lines of communication with all parents. Federation, local authority, portfolio holder relationships. Michelle and I reiterated the importance of joint working and good collaborative relationships between the local authority and the Federation, even though the schools belong to an academy trust. This was agreed by all parties. I asked for regular, half-termly meetings with the CEO, and this was agreed. Peter Hughes, the CEO, also explained that I was welcome to meet with him any time I wished, should an issue arose. We also agreed it would be good practice for me to visit all 3 schools, to meet with staff, and to meet with students, and I would be asking officers to action this for me. Ongoing media interest in the Federation. I was disappointed to see another news article appear at the weekend in the national newspaper, The Observer. It saddened me, as it was a summary of the 2nd of January parents' meetings, but I felt in order to sensationalise it, it had been worded to sound as if it was a much more recent meeting with new concerns having been raised. I wish to reassure the committee that every issue raised in that news article was previously known to me. There was absolutely nothing new in its contents. I feel it's a real shame that this article was written now, so long after that meeting at the start of January, because I genuinely feel we've made good progress with the Federation. They have listened to our parents, they have made good their promises to act upon parents and our concerns, and our senior officers are building good, collegiate working relationships with the Federation. I remain hopeful that this article does not damage the fragile relationships and trust with our parents, or reignite the worries and concerns in the local community. To reiterate and reassure you, committee, these are not new, unaddressed concerns. As Cabinet Member for Children's Services and Education, I am committed to ensuring that our children are safe, are happy and are thriving in our local schools, and that every child receives the excellent quality of education that they so rightly deserve. I thank you, committee members, for raising your concerns with me and for holding the children at the centre of all the work that you do. I hope you feel reassured that I maintain good oversight of the parental concerns and that I am continuing to build and support good working relationships with the DFE and with the Federation. I will continue to support our officers with the work that they do, as well as having the confidence and experience to hold all parties to account when required. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Cecil.
Yes, what's the status of the governing bodies? It seemed very fragile when we met in January the 2nd. I just want to know whether parents were putting themselves forward and they had it going, and they had the support of Mossbourne to get it going.
Yeah, we did touch very briefly on the governing body, and Peter explained that they have, some of the people from the previous governing body have now joined the new governing body. I have to admit, I haven't gone right through and looked at the governing body makeup and things, but I can certainly go away and do that and feed back to you. But we did touch on it, and Peter was pleased to report that some members who were on the governing body before were confident enough to join the new governing body.
Thank you for that.
Anybody else got any questions? Okay, just to summarise, first and foremost, Councillor Hartstein, you and I had different opinions at the last meeting, and I was somewhat critical. I have to say, I thought that was an exceptional report, and I thank you for the detail that you put in. No one can say, either inside the council or outside the council, that we're not taking this situation seriously. There's an extraordinary amount of detail in there, and you've clearly put in a lot of time personally and worked collegiately with officers and put in. And I am incredibly grateful, because that has informed me as a councillor on some things that I didn't know on the ground. I think it's really, really, really well done, and clear progress has been made. And that's all we can do. That's when we started this situation in the autumn of last year. There was a lot of despair and a lot of concern about where we were going. And as I say, thank you to yourself, thank you to colleagues in the education department. Nobody, I don't believe, can now turn around and say that Thurrock Council isn't taking its safeguarding responsibility seriously, and also the input that it has, limited as it may be, into the other educational issues around it. So thank you very much indeed. And we'll note that report. Thank you. Okay, so now we move on to item 6, which is the Q3 forecast revenue capital outturn report on adult social care and children's social services. And Seema's going to present this, I believe, to us. I was a bit worried about what you said earlier about what's coming in terms of SEND in years to come, but hopefully this short-term forecast will be a little bit less onerous. Seema, thank you.
Yeah. Just an overview. The Adults and Health Directorate position at Q3 is an underspend position of 1.644 million, and that is an increase in the underspend by 263k on the Q2 position. Despite an overall increase in the underspend, there has been further increase in client numbers since Q2, with the highest increases in older people's residential nursing care, older people's and physical disabilities direct payments, and learning disability supported living placements. And there's also been an increase in client numbers in receipt of reablement services. And on top of that, there has been some increase in the average weekly costs since Q2 in some of the service areas. But of the 2.933 savings target for adults and health, the forecast is moving in the right direction, has increased to 2.878 million, and the one saving that is rated as unachievable, that's red, has now been reversed as part of the MTFS process for 25-26. For children's services, the forecast overspend position is 319k, and that's a reduction, again, on the Q2 position of 215k. Of this reduction, 182k is attributable to the revision of salary forecast for the pay award across all service areas from the 2.5% from the 4% that was originally forecast. We've talked about the DSG and the government white paper, so hopefully that will bring some foresight into what's coming in the future for the DSG. And in terms of the savings target, excellent news for children's services. They are 100% delivery on target. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone got any questions?
I've just got one.
Yeah, Councillor.
It's an incredibly good to have an underspend, given that these services can easily run up costs to provide right need and the care for people. So I just want to say that I know it's incredibly challenging for the team to balance the level of care for people and the financial restraints. But they've done a very good job, and I think you should be proud. Don't you?
Thank you, Councillor Day. Anyone else wish to say anything?
Thank you, Chair. It's just regarding the weekly costs that sort of fluctuate a little bit. Is that just sort of inflationary differences, or are there some other factors at bay there?
It's more about the complexity. As the complexity of cases goes up, you will see that average weekly cost. There is some inflationary pressure, but we have built inflation buffers within the budget, so that will offset those pressures that we're facing in inflation. So the complexity for me, because we track it very closely, it's more of that complexity that's driving up those unit costs that we're seeing the pressures coming through.
Thank you. Thank you. We're in the fortunate position of having the two portfolio holders and the two relevant directors with us in the room, and it would be remiss of me not, I don't know, they may wish to comment, they may wish to praise colleagues, or they may wish to impart some other news on us. So I don't know whether either of the portfolio holders wish to speak, but certainly I know Mr. Percy would like to speak.
So thank you, Chair. So just on that observation, Councillor Rigby, so Seema's quite correct, and we value the support we get from finance colleagues in tracking the money and the spend on this, and we work very collegiately around it. Just to give you the example of what that means in reality, so we've got 1,700 clients living, being supported in their homes. What happens quite regularly is a client who has a certain need and a certain care package, they may have a little variance in their condition, their complexity increases, so immediately a review has to come in. It may be an increase in the hours of home care they get, and maybe they need, working age people may need more one-to-one support. So what you tend to find is very volatile. It tends to be managed on a quite regular basis, but there will be only a small number of clients whose needs change, and we have to address that immediately to meet their eligible needs going forward. They can have a little bit of impact on the budget. So that just gives you a little bit of a flavour of what we talk about when we say the complexity. It tends to be an increased care package because of it. And that might be the long term, it might be a short term need.
Thank you.
So it would be similar with children's services in terms of care packages, but I suppose I feel it's right that I should signal that it's great that our overspend has come down considerably, but there are still serious pressures, particularly within placement costs. So whilst the overall bottom line figure has come down, and that's brilliant for us as a council, going forward, there are still some serious pressures for us within the children's placement field.
Anybody else with any questions? Councillors seem happy. In which case, thank you very much indeed. And yeah, it is good to see this turnaround from where we were when we sort of came together in the summer. I think there were one or two fears that things could run away. So fair play. Again, it's good to be able to report that we've got a grip on something. We've managed it well. And as I say, congratulations to the teams and the finance team. Well done. In which case, we will move on to item 7. Sorry. Oh, recommendations. Sorry, there you see, my boss has told me now. Go back and do a recommendation. Probably to note. What page are we on, Claire? Come on. $61. 42. There we go. Well, my 42 is different to your 42. Apologies. 45. Recommendations. There we go. I get there in the end. My apologies. For the reasons set out in this report, the committee is recommended to, and I shall read these out, I think on block, Claire, is that okay? I'll do it on block. Note and comment on the Adults and Health Directorate's projected underspend position of 1.644 million at quarter three as per section 4.11. Item 2.2, note and comment on the adults and health savings delivery for 2024-25 against the target as per section 4.1.5. Note and comment on the children's services projected overspend position at quarter three of 319,000 as per section 4.2.1. Note and comment on the savings delivery against the target for 2024-25 for children's services as per section 4.2.12. And note and comment on the general fund capital position at quarter three as per section 4.4 and appendix 1 of this report, which shows anticipated slippage of 920,000 for adults and health and 172 for children's services. Are we happy to note those recommendations? Yes. Or note those items? Thank you. And thank you once again for keeping me in order. Okay, we move on, and apologies for the slight delay, to item 7, which is the Basildon Hospital Maternity Services CQC inspection report. And could I ask Nikki Abbott, who's joined us this evening, to present this item?
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to start this evening by introducing Debbie Goldsmith, who's our Director of Midwifery. She's going to talk us through the paper, and then we'll take any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Chair. So as the report says, almost a year ago now, in March 2024, we had an unannounced CQC inspection on all of the maternity sites across the MSC, including Basildon. And there are similar themes of concerns raised by the CQC in terms of what we've responded to immediately at the time. So the main 4 themes that came out of this report was around our governance arrangements, our triage department, staffing and quality of care. So specifically for governance, we know that Basildon, we have highest instant reporting at Basildon Maternity Unit than the other 2 sites. So that demonstrates a real kind of culture that our staff are not worried about raising concerns. But what they did say to us, that the instance that our staff had raised, that our teams hadn't responded to them quick enough. So we then put in safety huddles throughout the day. We have an 11 o'clock safety huddle where the team, led by the head of midwifery, review all the incidents from the day before and what's happened overnight so they can be responded to appropriately. There was also some delays in our complaints being responded to. I'm happy to say that we don't have any overdue complaints across MSC at the moment, particularly at Basildon. So this demonstrates as well that we're being responsive to our families that feel that when they need to write to us when perhaps they haven't received the care that they wanted to. Can I borrow yours? Sorry, my computer's gone off. So in terms of triage, what we identified, particularly at Basildon, that we didn't have a dedicated midwife that would man the triage phone. So this is where our patients ring in for advice. So for example, I might be heavily pregnant, my baby's not moving, and normally our patients will either just come onto the site or they'll ring up for advice. So we've put a dedicated triage midwife in our triage department to ensure that all calls come through to that department are monitored and they are answered timely and the appropriate advice is given. And we also audit that as well to ensure that we've got the right member of staff answering that phone. We've also implemented what we call BSOTs, which is like a triage tool. And this is a national tool, and it RAG rates our patients when they come to triage, and it RAG rates red, amber, and green. So, for example, again, I'll use it as an example. If a patient attends with reduced fetal movements, we take this very seriously, and they have to be reviewed within 15 minutes. I'm very happy to say we're 95% compliant with that safety tool, and we continue to make progress with that. In terms of staffing, I think we have to recognise that this report's nearly a year old, or the inspection was nearly a year ago. We have no vacancies at Basildon. And for those of you that know Basildon and the issues that we've had at Basildon historically, when I joined the Trust, there was a 25% vacancy rate at Basildon. So again, I think that this demonstrating this improving culture. All of our students stay with us now. We're not, we don't see them leaving after they finish their training unless they live in a different area. And for the first time, September last year, we actually attracted external preceptors came to Basildon. So I think it's a really good news story in terms of people wanting to come to work with us. So in terms of quality of care, there were some concerns about delays of induction of labour. We know induction of labour, the rates of that are rising nationally. Our current induction of labour, where, if in layman's terms, it's where there's a clinical indicator that we need to induce the labour and start, the contractions,
or, you know, whether mum might be post-dates and then we have to intervene and offer induction. But it's running about 35% at the minute, so it's quite a high induction rate nationally as well as the MSc. We've got risk assessments in place now. If there are delays of induction, the consultants review all the patients that are due to come in on that day for induction of labour, and then they document as evidence a plan of care made with the patient. We will call the patient, phone the patient, and advise them if there are going to be any delays, and we will invite them in for maternal wellbeing and a fetal assessment as well. So they were the kind of 4 key headlines that come out of that. And I think since then we've been working on an improvement programme across the MSc. We've just recently implemented a perinatal improvement programme where we've got 12 workflows within that, where we've identified where we need to be making some, our focus on improvements, and Basildon is very much part of that. So, as it says in the paper, Basildon has a state that requires improvement, but I think if you read the report, there's some really good positive things in there. And I think one of the things I was very happy about is that people know maternity services. So Basildon Maternity Unit was under a Section 31 from the CQC since 2019. Following the inspection last year, that has been lifted. So I think they were able to see though there were some concerns raised, not, immediately, but when the report was published, they were satisfied with the improvements that we'd made to lift that Section 31. Okay, sorry, can we go down? Sorry, just bear with me a minute. So one of the things as well that the CQC had raised, that some of our staff had reported, there wasn't enough equipment, and this was particularly in response to CTG monitors, and they're what we monitor the baby's heart rate with, so it's an essential piece of kit. I'm happy to confirm we did have the right amount of kit at the time, but what happens is some of the kit does get moved to different ward areas because we've got a number of wards, and it's never been that we don't have enough monitors to monitor our babies when women are in labour or in the antenatal period. They're not always in the right place, and we audit that on a monthly basis as well. And what they did find was some of our kit was out of date for testing, and again we responded to that immediately. We now have a monthly report of every single piece of kit, from CTGs down to thermometers, where the head of midwifery and the team review that all of the kit is in date and has been checked appropriately. Sorry, but just bear with me. So one of the things I've mentioned about the staffing and how much we've improved on that, we've improved in our training for our midwifery workforce and our obstetric workforce. So the national agenda is staff that work together, train together. So we have comprehensive MDT training across all of the sites, and we're compliant with that now across the MSc. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard of anything called the clinical negligence claims, CNST. We've just submitted that yesterday morning, for which we have passed every safety action within that, and that's part of training is in that as well. So the CQC also recognised that people were involved in their care. They spoke to a number of patients that felt that they had really good care from some of our midwives, that they were involved in planning cares, particularly if it was for a caesarean section or an induction. And so I think that's really positive in view of some of the reports that have come out of Basildon before, where patients have advised us they didn't feel involved in their care. We also work in collaboration with our Maternity and Neonatal Voices Partnership, and these are funded by the ICB, and we work in collaboration with them because they engage with our service users quite a lot. They have a lot of events in the communities, and they really focus on vulnerable women. and we have now appointed, well, the MNVP have appointed, we have a ethnically diverse MNVP, and this really helps us to reach out to the hard to get to areas where we need to be focusing on women accessing maternity care timely. Yeah. And just to summarise, you know, we recognise we've still got a lot of work to do, but since I've been here in this trust especially, the culture has really changed at Basildon, and it's changed so much, and we can demonstrate that in so many ways in terms of our outcomes, in terms of our staffing levels, and our incidents as well. But, you know, I'd like to just provide some assurance that we are committed to continue to improve the maternity services. And I think our perinatal improvement programme really does demonstrate that, with the 12 work streams in that, where we focus on what our priorities are across the MSE, which Basildon are part of. Thank you.
Thank you for that comprehensive report, and it does make good reading. Questions, anyone? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Culture change is not an overnight project. We know that well here at Thurrock, and it's good to hear that you do believe it's going the right way. But I'm a little bit confused about 1.5. It says the maternity unit was rated requires improvement for being safe, effective and well led, but it was rated good for being responsive. Responsive to what?
It is to our complaints, to if we've had a serious incident, in terms of, you know, immediate actions we put into place. So, go on.
So it also relates to access and waiting time. So, as Debbie described, things around how quickly you get assessed if you come in to triage, those kind of waiting times.
Anybody else got a question over in the ranks? Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report and for coming this evening. You say that there's been quite a lot of improvements done since the report regarding staffing and equipment, which obviously sounds very good. How are you actually monitoring that improvement? Are you having sort of feedback and appraisals with staff and patients to check that even though it's down on paper that you've got these, how are they actually in practice happening?
On that one.
So we have a perinatal assurance group that runs monthly, that's led by one of our non-executive directors. And so effectively they're holding us to account against all of the things that we said we would do to ensure that we're delivering on everything. We also, of course, have internal accountability and performance review meetings with the executive team of the hospital. And so, as Debbie's described, part of that includes how well we're responding to complaints, also staff survey feedback when we're talking about staff, ensuring everybody's had an appraisal. All of those things are being monitored on an ongoing monthly basis.
Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Yes, just going back to 1.10, you said some equipment had not been tested adequately, but now it is. And did you say it was once a month or something? And do you keep a record of it? Like, you know, like we might do a PAT test and they put little stickers on plugs and things like that. Do you do that?
It is PAT testing that we're predominantly referring to. It has to be done annually for most pieces of equipment, but what we're doing is we're reviewing the list once a month to ensure that everything has been tested as it should be.
Thank you. And is that that's recorded? Is it? Okay.
Yes,
Thank
yes, we get a log of all of the pieces of kit. Every single piece of kit in the maternity unit is on what we call a MEMS log, and it's got the dates when the kit came into the trust and when it needs to be reviewed. And we have that. We get sent that for all 3 maternity units on a monthly basis, so we can immediately identify if any of the kit's out of date or it's coming up to being out of date.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mama.
Hi. In relation to 1.12, talking about improving the quality of care for those who can experience barriers, such as people from ethnic minority groups, I have a question in relation to the black maternal mortality rate, which obviously is something that's in the news quite a lot, that black women are 3.7 times more likely to die during childbirth than white women. Is there anything that Basildon Hospital specifically is doing kind of in relation to that kind of point to kind of investigate why, or to make sure that that's not happening at Basildon? Have you got any information at hand? Or if you don't, would you be able to send that through? Because I'd be interested, and I think other members would be quite interested to know what you are doing about that.
So last year we did a deep dive into maternal deaths across the MSE, and the way that maternal deaths are reported is either, within pregnancy, up to 28 days after, and then within a year. And we reviewed all of those cases, and ironically, all of them were Caucasian. But we've got some work to do, and we're working with our vulnerable teams in terms of, particularly at Basildon, because of the demographics and the population that we serve, in terms of, we offer all patients a personalised care plan, so that's with their midwives, but we have acknowledged that we do need to do more work in terms of ensuring that women from certain cultures, Black African women, Asian women, that all the national embrace reports tell us that are more likely to have a poor outcome, such as a stillbirth or a maternal death. But that is something I acknowledge that we need to progress that further.
Councillor Leakey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report. In terms of your triage system, you mentioned that you don't have enough staff to monitor the triage. So how busy is your triage, and how do you have enough staff to actually attend to people who contact you for triage?
I think I said we didn't have enough staff in triage. Well, I got carried away with myself. I don't think I said that. It's adequately staffed. So in our triage department, we've got a dedicated midwife that answers the phone to all of our service users that want to, they phone in for any advice. But we've also got midwives working in that triage area, supported by our midwifery support workers, to provide the care that the women come into triage. We can have up to 30 women a day sometimes using that service. It's open day and night, and it's very busy, and it is, so in 2020, let me get my dates right, 23, we commissioned Birth Rate Plus, and Birth Rate Plus is a safer staffing tool for maternity. It's used nationally, it's recognised by NICE, and we last did that with them at the end of 2023, and they basically tell you against your activity, but not just based on 500 births, but they look at the acuity of patients. So they might say you might come in, have a normal but uncomplicated pregnancy, a normal delivery, and go home after 6 hours, whereas another patient might have hypertension, might have gestational diabetes, then need an emergency section. So they look at the births and the acuity, and then the model that they use or the methodology recommends to us how many staff we need in every single area of our maternity unit. And to provide assurance, we have that across all of our maternity services, including Basildon.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kim James from Health Watch Thurrock. And I just wanted to say that we've done a big piece of independent work with mums, new mums in Thurrock and dads, around the services and some of the things they were concerned about, which we did bring and were answered and were part of this work that was done. We also worked with CQC to pass that independent piece of work on. But one thing that I do know that you've got, which we've spoken to mums about since, is that you now have an independent advocate for mums who was a midwife, And we've spoken with her quite a few times, and I think the work that she does is really good because it gives those mums someone, we're independent, but we're not clinical. So we now sort of signpost to her, and I think she's doing a really big piece of work around that to support mums. And I know that some of the feedback that we've had when we were doing those pieces of work, we actually had a mum who unexpectedly had a stillbirth, and she chose to come back to us and speak to us about her experience of that and how well she was cared for and how she was supported. And she spoke about the room and all the support that she was given, which I think was really brave of her to do. But she wanted to reassure anyone in that situation that there was a really, really good support network there. But I also know that that advocate does a lot of work around mums or new mums that English isn't their first language, to make sure that there's interpreters and that they feel safe. And even if that's a family member, that there's an extra family member than what is recommended because that person does the interpretation for them. So I really think there's a long way going to improve some of the things. And I just think that's only fair to share that you didn't mention her, and I think she does need a big mention, and the fact that you've identified that need was a good thing. So thank you.
Stick your mic.
Yeah, she does. This is part of the feedback from the Ockenden response, having this role in place. And she does an amazing job and is able to spend time and that commitment with our families who may have had a stillbirth or a neonatal death. And thank you for pulling that out. Yes, does an amazing role.
Thank you. I don't know whether either of our portfolios, basically, Mark, I think it's mostly across your portfolio. Anything you'd like to comment on?
I think this is really positive news and a real step in the right direction. So thank you for your report and some of the positive news you've given. I know there's still a little bit more work to do, which I'd like to talk to you about at some point, but one of the things that did come up in the CQC report was about leadership. What assurances can you give that the leadership in terms of pushing through change and maintaining the change? Because the reason I asked the question is we had a CQC inspection in 2019 which came out with exactly the same result as you've got today, apart from your kind of special measures were lifted. And that's disappointing, bearing in mind that's not a great rating. What confidence and what leadership what's going to be different from what was in 2019, I guess is my question.
Thank you, Councillor. So, well-led wasn't actually part of the inspection this time around, but I'd say that the leadership's entirely different from the leadership that was in place at the time of the previous CQC inspection. We're also looking at different ways to ensure that we embed change. We've actually just today met with NHS England about applying some behavioural insights to how both the population behave and our staff behave. And we're really looking forward to working with them to look at different ways of really embedding cultural change. But also team health and culture is one of the 12 work streams that Debbie referred to as part of our perinatal improvement programme. So a lot of work really being done to ensure that we get the culture right, because we know if we can get that right, then a lot of the other things we need to be right will follow from there.
Thank you. Has everybody had asked the questions they need to ask? Thank you. Thank you, John.
Have you any issues, concerns with the state of your buildings and their maintenance?
Short answer, yes.
What is being done about it?
So as an organisation, there is a really significant amount of backlog maintenance that far exceeds the budget, the capital budget that's available to address all of those issues. However, so I sit on the trust board and I'm aware that we've increased the funding that's going into backlog maintenance for the forthcoming financial year. So on an ongoing basis, we are reviewing and reprioritising how our capital is spent and particularly the areas around backlog maintenance, to address the areas of biggest concern. So I cannot sit here and guarantee that that will be around maternity services on the Basildon site, but some parts of the service are in very good shape estates-wise, and others are in very poor condition estates-wise. So we'll be making sure that we're considered alongside the other services in the organisation for improvements being made.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Is there any help that the council can give you?
We welcome anyone that wants to say that we need some more investment in our women's and children's services, particularly at Basildon.
Thank you, John. Councillor Hooper was going to speak, and I think, and so was I, when I suspect we were going to say the same things, and John may have touched on it, but Councillor Hooper.
I just want to answer Councillor Sessor's question, really. I mean, we are arguing with the government about actually getting more funding into our NHS hospitals, particularly around years of underfunding in terms of maintenance of the hospitals. Our hospitals are all getting older and need that maintenance. So I have written to the Secretary of State on this issue, and I've also taken it up with the local MP, and I will be continuing to do so, because the state of our hospitals aren't as well as they ought to be. This has come up a number of times in meetings I've had with NHS managers. Councillor Spate and I have attended numerous meetings around where we discuss the state of our NHS stock in terms of its building, and I think we will continue to do so. So all I want to do is reassure you, Councillor Cecil, that it's very much on the agenda. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think what I was going to touch on was sort of approaching this from a Thurrock angle, and as Mark said, we've had a number of discussions on a number of topics, that if there's any, obviously you've got pressures on the building in Basildon. We haven't got a surfitter facilities in Thurrock, but we do have facilities in Thurrock. And taking that sort of oft-used word collegiate approach, if there's any areas you think that either A, this council, which does have some assets, or B, the other parts of the trust that we might need our support. I'm obviously thinking Orsett, I'm thinking Long Lane, I'm thinking Corringham IMC, you know, where we do have a bit of capacity there. You know, I think it would be useful. So anyway, somebody else has got a question now, is it? Does I see somebody waving? No, I do apologize. So yeah, just, you know, Thurrock is a place that moans a lot, but we also want to help a lot. So thank you very much indeed for the report, Debbie and Nikki. Good listening, good reading, and we're very grateful for you coming over this evening. And please feel free, as we're about to embark in an admin exercise, to depart. And thank you once again. At which point we will move on to the work programme. So I'll be handing over to Claire. We're at a strange time of year. And one of the things that we're going to touch on is the possibility of an April meeting, but I'll leave that clear. And the other one is Councillor Rigby came up with a couple of suggestions for things that we might look to consider as we move forward. And I don't know whether you just want to expand on that a little bit, Liz, if that's just to throw it out there, what I thought were two very good ideas for things we could look at.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a couple of things that I'd suggested to the Chair. Was doing something with the mental health. I think it was in the last HOSC, it was suggested that there might be a working group or a task and finish group, and that was put on hold, whether or not we could do something on that, particularly around children's mental health, which is a growing concern. The other thing I wasn't sure whether that was for this overview of scrutiny or for the Health and Wellbeing Board, was that I couldn't find a women's health strategy on the council website, and a lot of councils do have one. And as the chair mentioned to me, that there isn't a men's health strategy, but that is because women do suffer from more health conditions over their lifespan than men do.
And don't we men know it? Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As you're all aware, this is the last meeting of the municipal year, but we are beginning to look at the work programme for the next municipal year. We are engaging with all chairs and vice chairs, as well as our directors. We will also be coming to the committee later in that process as well. So if you do have any other particular strategic topics or areas that you feel that the committee would benefit from looking at, please keep those in mind. Myself and Lucy will be in touch over the next sort of couple of months, weeks and months. But as the chairs also mentioned, there has been a request for an April meeting. That will also depend on the business to transact at that meeting, and would also need to be cleared by the monitoring officer and the committee as well. So just to flag that.
I think probably, and a show of hands will probably do it. I think we're going to have some business in April. I mean, clearly we didn't have one because there was supposed to be elections, and we're in Purda, but that's not with us now. And it would seem to me, you know, it would be useful to take advantage of the opportunity. There are a couple of things that are going to come up that will sort of outstanding from the work programme, as Councillor Rigby just mentioned, some thoughts. And I think if members want to give me a show of hands whether they think it's a good idea or not, if they think it's a good idea, we can bounce it into Mr. Fenwick's department and see whether or not they agree that we should have a meeting. I personally think it doesn't have to be a long meeting, and it may well be that there aren't any items that come up, and it's easy to cancel a meeting, but it's not so easy to have one at very, very short notice if we feel the need. So, I mean, anybody got any thoughts, or do we just want to raise a hand?
Just one thing, Chair. Do the by-elections get in the way of it? They don't. Okay.
So we take it that we will ask the MO if it is feasible to fit in, and I imagine it'll be somewhere the back end of April. But if Claire can take that message back, and we'll see, and obviously we'll let you all know if that does. Thank you for that. It's another evening, but I think, you know, if we have evenings that are as constructive as we've had this evening, then it will be time well spent. Thank you. Action log. Everybody should have a Claire, aren't I lucky?
Thank you, Chair. So you will see that the action log and the recommendations tracker is now included within our published papers. This is due to the changes in the ONS procedure rules. And since publication, Action 3 has been closed as a response letter has been received and shared with the committee. And as Councillor Hooper highlighted, he will remain on the case of NHS and working with the MP as well. If you have any questions on the action log, please do let me know.
That's probably something you can have a look at and maybe contact Claire directly, but if we will move on, Councillor Hooper, are you just looking naturally inquisitive?
I'm looking naturally inquisitive. However, I don't know if this is the right place, so I apologise beforehand. But something I'd like the committee to consider in future in partnership with Place ONS, and I think it's a really quite important issue which affects health in our communities overall, which is air quality. And I was really wanting maybe the committee to consider a task finish group around air quality in Thurrock. This may be the wrong place, so I've come in at the wrong time because I've popped out for a second, but in terms of future thinking, I'd like that to be considered by both committees.
My view is it's a really viable topic. It'll probably be something that needs to carry into the new municipal year. And I think we've already had one. Was it corporate and place got together on a working task and finish group on school parking, which I think was deemed to be reasonably successful. So the precedent has been set for multi-committee task and finish groups. But I'm sure we can log that, and it may be something we discuss in April if we do have a meeting in April, or if not, goes to whoever's in this committee in the new municipal year.
Yeah, I understand it may have to go to the new municipal year. I totally get that, but I just want to put that on the agenda now.
Absolutely. I think air quality is absolutely paramount in most people's thinking. And we go to item 10, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the recommendations tracker that I just previously mentioned. So this complements the minutes and the action log to highlight the items and the journey for scrutiny as well. So again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those outside of the meeting if you'd prefer.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to Councillor Hooper's suggestion, would that be a cross-committee task and finish with place, the air quality that you'd be looking at?
I would suggest that's the best thing to do, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I say, if we don't get around to talking about it in April, we may well have different chairs and different committee members but it can still be on the agenda, and Claire will keep that live. So whoever sits in these seats in the new year, we'll have a starting point. And as I say, it's quite right. It's across two boundaries. I mean, you could almost argue it's across the other one. It's a full council task and finish because air affects everybody, and will undoubtedly require some sort of capital resource, which might fall into the corporate field. But yeah, it's flagged up, Councillor Hooper, now, and thank you for that. I think it's really important. So
just one thing.
Yes.
Just a footnote. There's a very good TV show on Netflix. It's called Toxic Town, and it's about Corby Council and a negligent case to them over toxicity in the air. It was a dust to sand. It was a very big case. It's true, and it's on Netflix right now. Sorry, I don't get paid for this, but just if they're on the subject, indulge me. Thank you.
David, I would always indulge you, and for one moment there, I thought you were going to point us in the direction of your latest reality TV show, and that probably would be toxic. So, with that, thank you, everyone. That concludes the business of the meeting this evening, and I now declare this meeting closed at, according to my watch, 8:33. Thank you very much indeed, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.